So today we are going to talk about what's happening in our industry, the state of the industry, specifically the communication era. And I'm going to walk you guys through kind of what I predict is probably going to happen somewhere in the next 5 to 7 years. But to start, I actually want to start with kind of an experiment. If you guys will let me do this, if this will work. Okay, here we go. 100% AI, but walk with me here because I have like a story that I want to tell you guys today that's like really, really interesting, how much it kind of parallels with what we're experiencing. So let's say that you are a physician in Venice, Italy, right? It's 1501, and you've spent kind of the last 10 years training under the masters. So you have an amazing ability to read all of your patients. Your practice is growing, right? So everything is going well. This week, though, all of a sudden you have a new competitor who's starting to produce a lot of these new pamphlets. And inside these are a guide to curing English sweating sickness, which was a really bad illness of the time. This guide was written by a verified nobody. Nobody can tell where it came from. Nobody can tell who wrote it. Nobody can tell whether or not it's true. But these are all over the place. They're everywhere now. Now, interestingly enough, this continues. And over the course of kind of the next few weeks, your patients start to quote this back to you. They'll come into your practice and say, I read this in a pamphlet. Is this true? I saw this symptom. Do I have it? These type of things are happening more and more often. And over the course of the next few months, you start to see all of these guides flood the market. Some of them are brilliant. A lot of them are actually dangerous, and they're starting to affect your business. Now, this is a serious problem because for both you and your industry, this resource looks exactly the same as everyone else's. Your customers can't tell the difference, and your competitors can't tell the difference. So now whoever is producing these is starting to eat in the market, and they're taking over, and nobody can tell what's going on or what's going to happen next. This is the story of the introduction of the Gutenberg Press, and I truly believe this is critical information, I think, for everybody, even if you're not a history buff. Mostly because what's happening to these guys in 1501 is happening to us right now in DTC and ecom and all over. Before the press, the number of manuscripts or books in circulation could be counted by the thousands. After the introduction of the Gutenberg Press, just 50 years after it actually came to market, there were more than 9 million books in circulation. Some accounts say up to 20 million. So they went to very, very little, all the way up to as many as you could count and higher just within a very short amount of time. A single press could apparently produce 3,600 pages per workday is how many books it could print. Compared to only a handful by hand, this is like a very drastic change, obviously, in the industry. The cost of producing a book collapsed to basically nothing. And with that, I think we had the barrier to publishing kind of just went out the door. Everything collapsed to the floor, and now everybody could produce a book if you wanted to. Now, if you compare this to the timeline that we just witnessed, it's almost exactly the same if you kind of look at it in parallel. So interestingly enough, in 2021, we were just barely starting to create these kind of like AI high quality images. I don't know if you guys remember it. It was like super exciting. Like all of a sudden we could create anything and they were awful. This was also when we saw Will Smith eating spaghetti and it was like not okay. That's when this happened. Right after that, in 2022, ChatGPT launched in November and became the fastest growing consumer app in history. 2023 saw massive improvements, though. We saw all kinds of reasoning. Now, all of a sudden, AI was starting to pass the bar exam, and we saw Meta release all kinds of updates and things to try and keep up with the market. 2024 is when we saw Sora come in. So we have video, we have AI, all kinds of things start to open up. We have real time, kind of like native interactions as well. We can do text, we can talk to our AI. And in 2025, we see a lot of disruption. Now our AIs can do AI things on their own with other AIs without us having to tell them to do it. So if you look at this timeline, we kind of just witnessed a very monumental historic event. And some estimates state that there are 10 billion new AI generated web pages that have been produced since 2023, and it's speeding up. The interesting part about this, I think for everybody in the room and just like anybody who's a history buff, I'm sitting here just watching it going, this is so fascinating. Unlike the Gutenberg Press, which basically took about 50 years to start feeling the effects of it, our Gutenberg event took less than 50 weeks. So if you guys are tired, this is why. We just witnessed this giant change in how the world works in a very short amount of time. I find this to be a little bit of a difficult part of being in D2C and e-commerce in particular, because the cost of producing content, any content, and producing it at scale has gone to the floor, right? It collapsed. So we now can do this. We can just produce as much as we want at any time, and we can shove it into any sort of platform and try and get what we want out of it. But here's the key to all of this here. The problem is, now that we have all of this content ability, nobody can tell the difference, right? So good content and poor content looks almost exactly the same, especially to the consumer. When they look at all of our ads in context of TikTok or Meta or anywhere else, They have a difficult time telling which brand is which. The formats I think that used to signal credibility, like YouTube, long form, video, UGC, now kind of signal basically nothing because everybody can do it. The interesting part about this is once you get to this point where everybody's kind of producing content and it's a lot easier to produce and you don't have to have any sort of like very in-depth, intense skill to do it, everything starts almost copying itself. So this is something that we're currently seeing kind of widespread. Since we've got this in our space where somebody will create a trend, an interesting piece of content, a good ad, whatever it is, we will all start to hop on that trend as fast as possible. And the copying creates an inability to differentiate. So it's very domino effect. We get to the point where we can't stop ourselves from copying good things, and then around and around it goes. People can't differentiate, so they copy, and it goes and goes and goes. So I want to show you a little bit of like how I'm looking at this year, especially since I do create a strategy for quite a lot of brands in D2C. I want to talk about trust because I think this is where it's going in 2026 and beyond. If you cannot build trust with your consumer, you're not going to be able to make it, regardless of how many tactics you put in place. So on our timeline here, there's an annual global survey that measures public trust. It's called the Edelman Trust Barometer. They've been doing this for about 26 years. And this polls people from all over the world to basically ask, like, what do you guys trust most? What do you hate? How can we build more trust, specifically with government entities and businesses in particular? The Edelman Trust Barometer is interesting because over the last 20 some years in here, they're starting to see that consumers are starting to pull back their trust with brands in particular and with businesses, and they're placing it back in their tribes. This is the reason why TikTok lives, influencers, creators, that's why that's working, because people don't know who else to trust other than people who look and feel like them. They're looking for brands who kind of understand what they're going through and come to them with a message that says, yeah, we feel that too. We feel that too, is what the consumers want to hear. In short, consumers are really looking for brands who feel like them, right? Doesn't always have to look like them. It's still important. You have to make sure that you have good brand. You have to make sure you have good visuals. But if you don't feel like a brand that can be trusted, nobody's going to buy from you. It's going to get more and more expensive as you go along. In general, most consumers are looking for less proof, and they're looking for peers, right? Somebody I can talk to who will talk to me too. Right now, AI is a peer. And this is really important. AI is a peer. Everybody in here has talked to AI on the daily, and I'm sure it comes into the conversation saying, you are brilliant. You are the smartest person I've ever met. Let's make 5 businesses. I can't believe you came up with this idea on your own. It is supposed to do that. It is built to be a helper. It's supposed to be an assistant, which means that everything it's telling everyone is too much in one direction. You're going to constantly hear it tell you you're amazing. So are the consumers, which means we're now going to get cyclical thinking inside the system, and it's going to become more and more and more important to help people realize sometimes you're wrong, and that's okay. Sometimes AI is going to tell you things that are not true, and that's okay. Very, very important to realize this is where the consumers are going right now, to find their information, to understand where to go next, to find a friend to help them to make these decisions. So AI is interesting because it's endlessly patient here. And every single time, even at 2 a.m., without judgment, it's going to tell these consumers exactly what it thinks is the best solution for them. And the way that it's going to judge that is not just your good SEO, your product titles, your, what's on your web page. It's also going to judge you based upon how your brand looks compared to everybody else and how your brand feels compared to everybody else. So I think the big question here, and this is kind of the entire premise of the whole presentation, the one that we have on all our minds all the time is, what should we do now that AI is here? What should we do now that our Gutenberg Press era is here? Should we become AI brands? Should we lean out our teams and give all of that over to AI? Should we give our entire social media presence over to this? Should we just automate everything? Should we be making content with it? And what happens if we don't? I think that's kind of a key question. I truly believe that the question here is not, should we use AI? Should we not use AI? I think that would just put us back to where the Catholic Church was, where they tried to just dismantle everything. AI is here. And it's here to stay, and it's going to become a large part of how we do our jobs and how the entire society works. Nothing's going to turn that off anymore. But I want us to remember that AI is just the printing press, right? It's just the press. And what we do with this press really does determine what happens to our businesses next. These guys, oh my gosh, I absolutely love what Vacation's doing. If you've ever studied their marketing, whoever's in charge of that, props to you. So these guys, They sell skincare, but they sell like sunscreen. The crazy part about how they're selling it though is they're not trying really to sell it off of what everyone else is trying to do. They're going after something completely different. So they've created kind of this elaborate kind of fictional, I don't even know what you call it, like universe. And it's a corporate universe where they have specific characters that they've chosen to represent the brand. And all of this is kind of in service of this obsessiveness over one specific emotion that they've tried to make their own. And they've done a very good job in doing that. This is 1980s, what we call leisure culture. So the whole entire brand, not just the website, but basically everywhere in the entire brand leans on this as a way to make themselves not just different, but also connective with the actual culture that they're trying to tap into. Their marketing kind of references things about their product, but they don't talk a whole lot about skin cancer. And they don't talk a lot about like daily regimens or sun protection. They really talk more about this guy, which is apparently HR associate Neil Smithson, who is a tennis player. And he has massive amounts of content. Every other post I see now from them is all about this Neil guy. And it is so fun to watch and so fun to consume that it's hard to get off of their socials, because now I need to know more about what Neil is doing. And then I'm going to go buy from this particular company because I like Neil. And this is what I'm talking about when I say we got to build trust. We can't just stop at we have a good product. You can't just stop at we do good work. We have the best customer service. We have the best ingredients. It's not good enough anymore. The consumers don't trust it because everyone is saying it. This is how we start to build trust. Very specific characters. The brands left standing from what's happening in AI are not going to be the ones that are going to be able to produce the most, because they're just going to blend like everybody else. They're going to be the conscious brands like these guys. They're going to be the ones that understand that a lot of this comes down to the fact that consumers don't really care who or what makes them feel seen, right? It could be a brand, it could be AI, it could be somebody sitting next to me. Doesn't matter who it is. Everybody wants to feel seen and belong to something that's important to them. As long as somebody cares about the same things that I care about, whether it's dressing up in Kiss makeup or taking care of my skin, as long as somebody cares that you exist, that's what's going to drive these consumers forward.